What happens when one of the most iconic performers of our generation walks onto a talk show stage expecting celebration, and instead gets blindsided by a comment that cuts deeper than anyone in the audience realizes? The studio lights of the View shimmered like polished diamonds that morning, bouncing off the glossy black floor as cameras glided across the set. The audience buzzed, an electric, restless anticipation, because today's guest wasn't just another celebrity promoting a film or a single. Today's guest was Lady Gaga, a figure who carried not just fame, but an aura, a myth, a history of reinvention and resilience. People didn't just look at her, they felt her. She walked onto the stage with her usual blend of glamour and grounded energy, a soft smile playing on her lips as applause thundered around her. Spiked boots, a futuristic coat, and eyes that held both warmth and the quiet intensity of someone who'd lived 100 lives. Joy Behar greeted her with a bright grin. Whoopi offered her a nod of respect, and Sarah Haynes looked genuinely excited. But Sunny Hostin, arms crossed, chin tilted slightly, eyes calculating, watched her with a reserved expression that viewers at home would later rewind again and again. Gaga sat, smoothing her coat, and the audience eventually settled. Cameras zoomed in. A producer whispered "stand by" through the earpiece of the hosts. And then, the conversation began, light, pleasant, innocent. At first, Joy opened with a warm compliment about Gaga's artistry. "You always bring something new to the table," she said. "I mean, the costumes, the vocals, the acting. It's like you were born to reinvent yourself." Gaga smiled humbly. "Oh, thank you. I just try to express what I feel inside." Sarah chimed in next. "And your fans love you for that. You have such a powerful connection with them." It was all smooth, pleasant, feel-good daytime TV. But beneath the surface, there was an uneven rhythm, like a drum that hadn't yet begun its solo. Gaga sensed it. The audience sensed it. Even Whoopi raised an eyebrow as if she smelled the tension forming, gathering itself like a storm cloud waiting for the right moment to release. Then Sunny leaned forward. "So, Gaga," she began, voice calm but edged with something pointed. "Over the last few years, a lot of people have been saying your career has changed. Some say it's slowed down, that you've become more of a personality than an artist." The air snapped. It wasn't the question itself, it was the tone. Controlled, sharp, and delivered with the precision of someone who knew exactly which nerve she was pressing. The audience let out a single collective "ah," but quickly muffled it, unsure how Gaga would respond. Gaga didn't react at first. Not externally. Internally, though, her heart lurched, not out of insecurity, but out of sheer disbelief. She blinked once, twice, keeping a soft smile on her face, but her eyes changed. They narrowed, not defensively, but with a kind of raw, honest confusion. Whoopi shifted in her seat. "Sunny," she warned lightly. But Sunny doubled down. "I mean, it's a fair question," she insisted. "People feel like the early fire isn't the same anymore, that the authenticity got buried under spectacle." Gaga inhaled slowly. In that single breath, the audience felt the temperature shift. The lights seemed brighter. The silence suddenly carried weight. The producers behind the cameras exchanged quick glances. Even Joy subtly straightened up, as if preparing for impact. Gaga folded her hands in her lap, her voice calm but threaded with steel. "Are you asking if I've stopped being myself?" she said softly, "or if I've stopped being what other people want me to be?" Sunny didn't blink. "I'm asking whether the world still sees you as an artist first." That was when something inside Gaga snapped, not in anger, but in truth. Pure truth. She leaned forward, meeting Sunny's eyes with a quiet fire that felt almost cinematic. "You know," Gaga began, her voice low and steady, "every time I reinvent myself or evolve, people say I'm either losing my identity or hiding from something. But the truth is, Sunny, I'm an artist because I grow, because I feel deeply, because I live my life with intention. My career hasn't slowed down. It's widened." A few audience members clapped, unsure if it was the right moment. Sunny didn't break. "But do you think the public agrees?" she pressed. Gaga's soft smile faded, replaced by a small, almost imperceptible frown. Hurt, subtle, but there. She looked at Sunny not with irritation but with a piercing honesty. "Do you agree, Sunny?" she asked. "Is that how you see me?" Sunny hesitated, for the first time. And in that tiny hesitation, Gaga saw something. She saw the root of the comment. The doubt. The misunderstanding. Maybe even a little resentment. The audience leaned in as if the chairs themselves were pulling them toward the stage. Gaga didn't look away. Because I've worked my whole life to be taken seriously. I've bled for my work. I've cried for it. I've gone to the darkest places in myself to create something meaningful. So when someone suggests my career is fading because I don't look the same or sound the same as I did 10 years ago, it feels dismissive. And honestly, it feels a little cruel. Sunny's jaw tightened. Joy broke the tension with a nervous laugh. Okay, ladies. But the moment had already cracked open. Gaga wasn't finished. She continued, her voice trembling just slightly, not from weakness, but from the emotional weight she'd been holding back. I don't live my life to impress people. I live it to create. And if the world can't see that, if you can't see that, then maybe what's fading isn't my career. Maybe it's people's willingness to understand what real artistry looks like. The audience erupted into applause, longer, louder, more passionate than before. Sunny sat back, caught between defensiveness and reflection. Gaga turned toward her fully, expression calm again, but eyes still burning. I came on this show to talk about my work, not to justify my worth. And I think I deserve that respect. The cameras tightened on Sunny's face, capturing her forced smile as the tension continued to thicken. And just as the applause settled, Gaga added one final line, soft, but devastating. You don't get to decide when my story ends. The audience gasped, some stood, some clapped again, and Sunny's lips parted in surprise. But the moment wasn't over. Because Sunny wasn't done. And neither was Gaga. The studio felt different now, charged, unsettled, vibrating with an undercurrent that no one had expected when the cameras first rolled that morning. The audience had just witnessed Lady Gaga draw a line in the sand with a quiet power that left everyone stunned. But while some confrontations end in the silence that follows a sharp truth, this one was just beginning. Because Sunny Hostin was never the type to back away from a challenge delivered so directly. Gaga sat upright, shoulders squared, breathing steady, but her eyes still flickered with the sting of being misunderstood. Across from her, Sunny shifted forward again, smoothing her blazer as if preparing for an argument she'd already decided she wasn't going to lose. Joy Behar threw a desperate glance toward the producers, who looked back with wide eyes and frantic hand signals, none of which she could interpret fast enough to make a difference. Whoopi Goldberg raised a hand subtly, signaling to ease the tension. We don't want this to turn into a... But Sunny cut in, her voice crisp. I'm not deciding when your story ends, Gaga. I'm just saying there's public conversation about whether your art is still as impactful as it used to be. Gaga's lips parted, not in shock this time, but in resolve. She looked at Sunny with an expression that carried both weariness and strength, the kind of expression you develop only after years of fighting to be seen for who you really are. The public conversation, Gaga repeated softly, almost tasting the words, often reflects what the media feeds it. The audience murmured again. Sunny lifted her chin. Are you suggesting I made that up? Gaga leaned in slightly. I'm suggesting you're choosing to highlight a narrative that reduces my life's work to a trend line on a chart. Sunny's eyebrows arched, a flicker of defensiveness rising in her eyes. I'm highlighting what people talk about. People say a lot of things, Gaga replied, her voice tightening. People said I'd never be taken seriously as an actress. People said my mental health made me unreliable. People said I was too strange, too loud, too emotional, too theatrical. And each time, I proved them wrong. So when you sit here on national television and ask me if the public still sees me as an artist, it feels like you're repeating a criticism without understanding the reality behind it. The silence that followed was sharp, like glass. Sunny crossed her arms. I think I'm allowed to ask tough questions. You absolutely are, Gaga said, her voice steadying again. But tough questions should have substance, Sunny. They should be rooted in curiosity, not judgment. This time, the audience didn't just murmur, they applauded. Loudly. Several people even whistled. Sunny's jaw tightened. She waited for the noise to lower, then spoke more carefully. My job is to reflect what people say, whether it's flattering or not. Your fans might see your evolution as beautiful, but some critics argue that the theatrics overshadow your raw talent. Gaga inhaled. A deep, grounding breath. She'd heard variations of this argument her whole career, people trying to separate her from the very essence of her art, as if she wasn't capable of being more than one thing at once. She answered slowly, choosing each word with an unmistakable precision. Theatrics are not a mask for my talent. They are part of it. The way I dress, the way I sing, the way I act, the visuals I create, those aren't distractions. They are expressions. They are extensions of my soul. Sunny opened her mouth to respond, but Gaga continued, her voice gaining volume, emotion swelling beneath it. I'm a musician, yes. But I'm also an actress, a performer, a creator. My work is not simple, and it's not meant to be digested in one glance. That's the point. I'm not here to be comfortable. I'm here to make people feel. Sometimes that feeling is joy. Sometimes it's discomfort. But it's always intentional. The audience erupted again. The applause was louder now, more forceful, more passionate. They weren't just clapping for Gaga. They were responding to the way she spoke her truth with a vulnerability that felt almost too real for live television. Sunny pressed her lips together, clearly frustrated. I'm not denying your impact. I'm just asking whether you think your newer work resonates the same way your earlier work did. Gaga's voice softened, but not in surrender. In depth. Art evolves. Artists evolve. And if someone's measuring my worth based on whether my current work feels the same as something I made at 22, then they are not looking at the full picture. They are comparing memories, not reality. Whoopi leaned in, sensing the emotional weight thickening in the air. Gaga, when was the moment you realized people were misunderstanding your evolution? Gaga paused. Her eyes moved across the audience, as if searching for something, maybe for the version of herself who once doubted whether she'd ever be understood. It was after A Star Is Born, she said quietly. People started saying I had finally proven myself, like I'd never been legitimate until that moment. And it was confusing, because I had been working hard my entire career. But suddenly, I was worthy only because I'd fit into a box they recognized. A box they approved of. The audience fell utterly silent. Sunny's expression softened, just a little. I remember that moment, she said quietly. You were extraordinary in that film. Gaga nodded gratefully. Thank you. But what hurt wasn't the praise, it was the implication that everything before it didn't count. Sunny opened her mouth but didn't speak. She looked down, tapping her card lightly. A subtle sign she was recalibrating. Gaga leaned back, and for a moment, the tension seemed to settle, until Sunny looked up again, eyes steady. So you're saying, Sunny began carefully, that the criticism doesn't bother you. Gaga's eyebrows rose, surprised by the shift in tone. Of course it bothers me, she admitted. I'm human. But what bothers me more is when criticism becomes dismissal. When it stops being about the art and starts being about undermining someone's identity. The words echoed through the studio. Gaga's voice dropped to almost a whisper. You said people see me more as a personality now than an artist. But do you know why I have a personality, Sunny? Because people made assumptions about me before they ever understood me. And I had to fight, to speak, to shout sometimes, to make them listen. Sunny's eyes flickered, not with defensiveness now, but with the beginning of understanding. But before she could reply, Gaga leaned forward again, her tone shifting, gaining a sharper edge. I'm not a headline. I'm not a caricature. And I won't let anyone turn my life into a surface-level conversation, not even you. The audience gasped again. And Sunny finally reacted. She leaned in, eyes hot, voice low. So you think I'm reducing you? Gaga didn't blink. I think you're underestimating me. The air froze. The tension tightened like a rope pulling from both sides. And everyone knew. This was about to erupt into the most intense exchange The View had seen in years. The air in the studio felt heavy now, so heavy that even the cameras seemed to hesitate when moving, as if afraid to cut through the tension that had settled like a storm cloud pressing down on the room. Lady Gaga and Sunny Hostin sat across from each other, locked in a stare that felt like two worlds on the brink of collision. The audience was silent, no shifting, no coughing, no rustling of clothes. Just breath held, collectively, waiting to see which woman would break the stillness first. Gaga's last words, I think you're underestimating me, hung in the center of the table like a challenge that demanded an answer. Sunny leaned in, eyes narrowing just slightly, her voice sharp but controlled. I'm not underestimating you. I'm questioning the narrative around you. That's my job. Gaga tilted her head, almost curious. And my job is to tell my truth. So if your question undermines the essence of who I am, I'm going to push back. Joy Behar raised both hands like she was trying to physically part the waves building between the two women. Okay, let's take a breath. We're having a conversation here, not a courtroom battle. But Sunny wasn't stepping back, not yet. Gaga, I respect your work, she insisted. But you're acting like asking whether public perception has changed is an attack on your worth. It is, Gaga replied softly, when it's framed as if I've faded. As if the only valid version of me is the one that existed 10 years ago. Sunny rested her elbows on the table. I asked because you're one of the most watched, most dissected celebrities in the world. When you move, the world talks. It's fair to question how that conversation evolves. And it's fair for me to challenge why that question exists in the first place, Gaga said, her voice deepening. Because when the world talks about me, they are not always talking to me. They are talking around me. Over me. Whoopi took a deep breath, clearly fighting the urge to intervene. Ladies, we can have strong opinions without making this personal. Gaga glanced at Whoopi, then back at Sunny. It isn't personal. It's honest. But Sunny's posture shifted, just enough that those who were paying attention could see the emotional stakes rising behind her own words. Do you know why I ask tough questions? Sunny shot back. Because as a black woman in journalism, I've had to fight for the right to question powerful people. If I'm not direct, I get dismissed. If I'm not sharp, I get ignored. So yes, sometimes I push hard. That's not about you. It's about the world I've had to navigate. Something in Gaga's expression softened, not in surrender, but in recognition. She nodded, slowly. I understand that. Truly. And I respect you for it. But strength doesn't have to mean cutting someone down to size. Sunny frowned. I wasn't cutting you down. Not intentionally, Gaga said. But impact still matters. The audience murmured, many nodding, some shifting, all completely entranced. Sunny exhaled, her expression tight. Then let me ask you directly. Do you believe your artistry today is stronger than when you first started? Gaga paused. The question wasn't cruel this time. It was genuine. Real. Maybe even vulnerable. She leaned back, eyes drifting upward, searching her own memories. When I started, I was fighting to be seen. I was loud, wild, determined, and I'm proud of that girl. But now, she looked back at Sunny with a rawness that felt almost sacred. Now I'm fighting to be understood. And that's harder. The words settled into the studio like falling petals. Sunny blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity. Joy placed a hand over her heart. That's beautiful. Gaga continued, voice trembling just slightly. When I write music now, it's not about making noise. It's about telling stories that come from real wounds, real healing, real love. I'm not the same person I was then, and that's the point. Growth doesn't make you weaker. It makes you deeper. The audience broke into applause, slow at first, then building into something full and resonant. Gaga's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She held the emotion like a performer who knew how to channel feeling without losing control. Sunny waited for the applause to die down before speaking again. This time, her tone was less sharp, more contemplative. But Gaga, do you think people still connect with that depth? Gaga smiled gently, a smile that carried both sadness and confidence. The people who are meant to will. And those who don't, maybe they are looking for the version of me that made them feel something they don't know how to recreate. That's okay. But I won't chase nostalgia to stay relevant. Sunny's eyes flickered with something unspoken, something that hinted at respect, even if she wasn't ready to say it aloud. But she also wasn't ready to retreat. So when critics say you rely too much on spectacle, Sunny pressed, what do you say to that? Gaga didn't hesitate. I say spectacle is an art form. Michelangelo didn't paint ceilings because he thought small. Beyoncé doesn't perform in silence. Art is theater. And theater is emotion amplified. Sarah Haynes burst into a grin. Okay, that line belongs on a poster. The audience laughed, easing the tension just a little. Sunny's tone softened yet again. But do you think spectacle ever overshadows your message? Gaga shook her head. The only people who say that are the ones who don't want to look deeper. If a costume distracts someone from the music, that's a choice they're making, not a flaw in my art. Whoopi finally spoke, leaning forward. So what's the heart of this for you, Gaga? What's the thing you wish people understood better? Gaga's voice quieted. Her eyes drifted again, not away, but inward. That I'm not a character, she whispered. I'm not a manufactured thing. My life, my art, my pain, they are not costumes I put on. They are a part of me. When I create something bold or strange or emotional, it's not because I'm hiding. It's because I'm letting people see more of me. Sunny watched her closely, the defensive wall she'd held so firmly beginning to crack, revealing not weakness, but humanity. Gaga added, and when someone questions whether I'm still an artist, after everything I've poured into my work, It hits a place in me that still remembers being dismissed before I ever had a chance to speak. Sunny's lips parted, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked down at her cue card again, but not out of frustration this time. Out of reflection. Gaga continued gently. You don't have to love everything I do. You don't have to understand all of it. But please, don't reduce it. A hush swept across the studio. Several audience members dabbed at their eyes. Even Joy appeared moved. This is one of the most honest conversations we've had on this show. But Sunny wasn't finished, not yet. She lifted her gaze again, her voice more even, more grounded. So answer me this, she said quietly. What do you want your legacy to be? Gaga inhaled. Then she smiled. Not soft, not fragile, powerful. I want my legacy to be that I never stopped evolving, that I never let anyone else define my boundaries, and that I turned every misunderstanding into art. The audience erupted, applause, cheers, whistles. But the moment of connection was brief. Because Sunny, perhaps unsure whether she felt inspired or challenged, leaned forward again and asked the question that would ignite everything. So if your evolution is so powerful, why do some people say you're hiding behind it? The room froze. Gaga's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with something deeper. And everyone realized. This was the moment the confrontation would finally explode. The question hit the table like a lightning bolt. Why do some people say you're hiding behind your evolution? A gasp rippled through the studio, not dramatic, not exaggerated, but real. Raw. The kind of sound that happens when a room full of people feels the exact same shock at the exact same second. Even the cameras seemed to flinch. Lady Gaga didn't move at first. She didn't blink or breathe or shift in her seat. She just stared at Sunny Hostin, the words echoing in the silence between them like a challenge that cut straight into the deepest layers of her identity. Sunny held her gaze, but something in her eyes flickered. Uncertainty, maybe. Even she seemed to realize the question had crossed a threshold. Whoopi muttered under her breath, "Oh boy." Joy Behar looked like she wanted to sink into her chair and disappear. Sarah Haynes whispered, "This just got too real." But Gaga finally inhaled, a slow, measured breath that pulled the entire audience with it. She leaned forward, hands folding gently on the table, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not hiding," she said. "I'm healing." The room went still. Gaga continued, her voice steady but trembling at the edges with emotion she'd held back for too long. "People look at someone like me and think the art, the costumes, the reinventions, they are shields, masks, ways to run from reality. But the truth is, every time I evolve, it's because I've faced something in myself that changed me." Sunny's expression softened, almost imperceptibly, but Gaga wasn't speaking for Sunny anymore. She was speaking for herself. For her fans. For anyone who'd ever been misunderstood for simply trying to grow. "There were years," Gaga went on, "when I couldn't get out of bed without pain. Physical pain. Emotional pain. The kind no one sees but everyone speculates about. And through all of that, I created. I performed. I showed up. Not because I was hiding, but because art was the only thing keeping me alive." A hush deafened the room. Gaga's eyes shined, not theatrical, not performative, but human. "The irony," she said, "is that the world thinks I hide behind the armor. But the armor is what lets me stand here. The art is what saved me. If that looks like hiding to some people, maybe they've never needed art the way I have." A woman in the front row wiped a tear from her cheek. Sunny swallowed. For the first time, she didn't seem ready with a comeback. She wasn't defensive, she wasn't combative, she was listening. But Gaga wasn't finished. She leaned closer, tone deepening. "And when someone on national television implies that my evolution is a mask, it feels like I'm being punished for surviving." Sunny's breath caught. Joy whispered, "Oh my God." The audience erupted, clapping, cheering, standing. It wasn't polite applause. It was a wave. People weren't just supporting Gaga. They were feeling her. Sunny waited for the noise to settle, and when she finally spoke, her voice had shifted. Lower. Less sharp. "Gaga, I didn't mean to invalidate your experience." Gaga nodded gently. "I know, but intent doesn't erase impact." Sunny took a breath, one that looked almost painful. "You're right. I could have asked differently." And that was the first crack in her armor. But Gaga didn't push it. She didn't shame her or corner her. She simply said, "We all have moments we could have handled better. I'm not here to attack you. I'm here to defend the work I've poured my soul into. Sunny looked down at her hands. I respect that. The tension in the room loosened, not gone, not resolved, but changed. The confrontation had burned through its fiercest flames, leaving behind vulnerability on both sides. Whoopi seized the moment. Okay, she said, waving her hands dramatically. We're taking a beat. Everyone breathe before we all spontaneously combust on live television. The audience laughed, a collective release after 20 minutes of emotional whiplash. Gaga smiled softly. Not triumphant, not smug, just relieved. But the story didn't end with the tension breaking. Because the moment the show wrapped, the moment cameras cut and the host stood from the table, the studio exploded with chatter. Audience members whispering, producers scrambling, assistants rushing towards Sunny and Gaga at the same time. Joy Behar leaned towards Sarah and whispered, "Well, that's gonna trend for a month." She was wrong. It trended instantly. Within minutes, phones lit up like wildfire across the studio. Clips uploaded by audience members hit Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. The hashtags skyrocketed. #Gaga on the View. #Gaga vs Sunny. #Evolution is not hiding. #respect the artist. Millions watched the clip of Gaga saying, "I'm not hiding. I'm healing." It spread like a heartbeat across social media, stitched into edits, reaction videos, emotional tributes from fans who had their own stories of survival. Sunny Hostin started trending too, but with mixed reactions. Some defended her, some criticized her, some debated her question for hours online. But Gaga became a symbol that day, not of controversy, of truth. Later, backstage, the tension finally cracked open into something real. Sunny approached Gaga slowly, almost cautiously. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. Gaga nodded. Sunny exhaled. "I know I pushed too hard. And I know I didn't understand the full weight of what you've carried. I'm sorry for that." Gaga's response was immediate and sincere. "I accept your apology." Sunny nodded, grateful. "You know, you taught me something today." Gaga smiled. "We all teach each other something if we listen." The two women shared a moment of quiet understanding. Two powerful voices, two different worlds, meeting in a place of humanity. And outside the door, the studio hall buzzed with the sound of an entire crew still rattled from the emotional tremor that had shaken their stage. As Gaga walked toward the exit, she paused, looking back at the iconic The View backdrop, now bathed in dimmed lights. She breathed in, letting the moment settle into her bones, knowing this confrontation would follow her for weeks, maybe months. But she didn't regret a single word, because she had spoken her truth, and the world had heard it. She stepped out into the crisp air, where fans were already gathered, cheering, calling her name. She waved, smiled, and felt something lift inside her. Not weight, freedom. And now, standing at the edge of the chaos, she whispered to herself, "They'll never underestimate me again." The screen fades. And now, to the viewer watching this explosive moment unfold on Talk Narrative. What do you think? Did Sunny go too far, or was she asking what needed to be asked? Drop your opinion in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Talk Narrative for more powerful, emotional, drama-filled stories just like this one.